The alien lecture hall smelled faintly of ozone and sterilized fabric, a combination that felt both too clean and somehow oppressive. Rows of quadrupedal and bipedal students sat in their respective hydration pods or upright harnesses, depending on anatomy. Over a dozen species hailing from different corners of the Orion Concordance were gathered, all enrolled in a xenopsychology class at the Concord Intercultural Academy, orbiting the twin moons of Virlia. Professor Kale, a towering, blue-hued Marnathi with skin that shimmered like fish scales under bright light, tapped one of his 4 fingers against the holoboard. An image appeared, an archival video clip of humans during a hurricane, boarding up windows, fleeing inland, and crowding underground shelters. "Let this be clear," Kale said in his gravelly tone. "Humans, while biologically adequate, have an overwhelming tendency to avoid danger when possible. Their instincts tell them to flee, not confront. This is consistent across countless observed incidents." A soft ripple of agreement passed through the room. The Urat twins clicked their tongues in unison, a sign of agreement. A green-skinned Lothari student swiveled in his seat and said, "I read their crisis manuals. They emphasize retreat, not confrontation." "That is correct, Trenak," Kale nodded. "Their cultural psyche is risk-averse. Heroic behavior exists, but it is typically reactive, not proactive." From the back of the room, a younger Yelvani student clicked a button on her learning pad, raising a question. "But aren't humans known for bravery in wars?" Kale turned to her. "Yes, but bravery in structured conflict is not the same as voluntary danger in unstructured environments. When there is no command structure, no reward, humans tend to weigh self-preservation more heavily." No one argued. The class moved on. 2 days later, a Concordance shuttle docked at the Academy's southern terminal. Among the arrivals was a group of exchange volunteers from Earth. One of them, a tall man in his late 30s with a worn Seattle Mariners cap and a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, stepped out and blinked against the artificial sunlight, simulating a pleasant Earth afternoon. "Name?" the intake officer asked without looking up. "Tyler Langston," the man said, adjusting his grip on the bag. "Profession? Firefighter. Volunteer deployment." The officer looked up now. "You're going to be embedded with the Academy's emergency response team. You've passed all interspecies hazard training, passed it twice," Tyler replied. "Didn't trust the first instructor." He was assigned quarters in the lower west wing near the maintenance decks, a quiet sector mostly reserved for technical staff and field volunteers. The room was Spartan but clean. He unpacked slowly, carefully placing a photo of a woman and a young girl, Joy and little Vessa, on the shelf beside the bunk. Then he sat down and stared at it for several minutes before stretching out with a sigh. A day later, Tyler was given a tour of the Academy by a robotic assistant with a chirpy voice that grated on his nerves after the first 30 minutes. The place was massive, with over 600 species represented in some way, either through physical presence or remote learning. The Emergency Response Unit was a mix of artificial intelligences and live responders, most of whom had never seen active disasters. Tyler was the only human. When introduced to the xenopsychology class, Professor Kale barely acknowledged him. "Ah yes, the human volunteer." He turned to his students. "Observe, humans can contribute in post-crisis support. Do not expect them to act in active hazard zones unless compelled by authority." Tyler raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Over the next few weeks, he kept mostly to himself, running training drills, responding to minor incidents like equipment malfunctions or habitat seal failures. The students often watched him from a distance, murmuring about how Earthlings were emotionally brittle and heavily reliant on structured systems for decision-making. A few aliens were curious enough to ask him about past missions, and Tyler, patient but brief, told them stories of flood rescues, wildfire evacuations, and once carrying a woman down 15 flights of stairs during a blackout. "But you were ordered to do that, correct?" asked Trenak. "No," Tyler replied. "Nobody ordered me, I just couldn't leave her there." Trenak tilted his head, but there was no guarantee of success. "What made you proceed?" Tyler shrugged. "She needed help, I was there. Confusion spread across Trenak's expression, but he let it go. Then came the explosion. It started as a low tremor in the Academy's subreactor facility, a backup power system deep in the lower hull. A thermal regulator failed due to a manufacturing defect, initiating a cascade of overheating conduits. The automated systems failed to shut it down in time. At level G9, a fire broke out, quickly consuming the narrow maintenance corridor. Smoke filled the air, and the fire suppression system stalled for 10 seconds too long. The area was being used for storage, and unknown to most, 3 junior students from the Glary species were conducting a covert experiment in one of the unused labs nearby. The emergency klaxons blared. "Evacuate level G through auxiliary lifts," came the automated voice. Containment breach in progress. Tyler was in the adjacent deck when the alert came through. He grabbed his fire-resistant suit, clipped on the respirator, and sprinted toward the access shaft. "Langston, wait," called a technician. "They haven't confirmed if anyone's still in there." "Exactly," Tyler said, slamming his fist into the override panel. The door hissed open, revealing rising smoke. The fire was worse than expected. The heat shimmered visibly even through the protective visor. Tyler's helmet display flickered as he moved forward, searching for life signs. His communicator buzzed. "Langston, we are detecting unstable plasma conduits near your position." "Then tell me where they're stable," he snapped. After 5 minutes of searching, he found the 3 Glary students huddled behind an overturned supply container. One was unconscious, the other 2 barely breathing. "Can you walk?" he asked the conscious one. "No, injuries, legs," the alien rasped. "Figures," Tyler muttered. He hoisted the smallest Glary over one shoulder, dragged the second by the arm, and attached a beacon to the unconscious one. The path to the exit was blocked by a collapsed support beam. "Langston, we're seeing rising CO2 and structural instability," the comms officer said. "I don't have time for a lecture," Tyler grunted. "I need a clear path now. We're rerouting ventilation. 30 seconds. Make it 20. He kicked open an auxiliary door and pulled the 2 Glary through. Heat licked at his back, and his oxygen levels were dropping fast. His suit's warning lights blinked red. When he returned for the 3rd Glary, a pipe burst nearby, sending a flash of flame across the corridor. Tyler ducked and rolled, shielding his head with his forearm. The suit's exterior blackened, but didn't fail. He reached the unconscious student and pulled him free just as a second explosion rocked the deck. A beam fell, crushing Tyler's left leg beneath it. The pain was blinding. He screamed. "Langston, your vitals are spiking. You must evacuate." "Working on it," he gasped. With one arm, he dragged the Glary toward the exit. Every inch felt like a mile. By the time he reached the fire door, backup responders had arrived. They pulled the alien to safety, then turned to Tyler. "He's stuck," one shouted. Tyler's vision blurred. "Cut the beam." "We don't have gear for that." "Then get it," he yelled. They returned minutes later with plasma cutters. The beam groaned as it lifted. Tyler was pulled out, his suit torn and leg visibly twisted at an unnatural angle. He passed out. He woke 2 days later in the Academy's medical bay. His leg was in traction, wrapped in a composite brace. A nurse was adjusting the Roman 4 line. "Hey," Tyler croaked. "You're lucky," she said. "Compound fracture, 2 cracked ribs, 2nd-degree burns. But no organ damage. How long?" 8 to 10 weeks minimum for the leg. "You'll need rehab," he groaned, closing his eyes. "The students, all alive. Thanks to you." A week later, Professor Kale visited the medical bay. He stood at the foot of Tyler's bed, silent for a long time. "I was wrong," he said finally. Tyler didn't look up. "About what?" "You volunteered, without command, without reward. You acted when others hesitated." "I didn't do it to prove anything." "I know," Kale said. "That is what makes it significant." Word spread quickly. The xenopsychology students who once debated human aversion to danger now watched Tyler with a different kind of curiosity. Trenak visited and asked no questions. He just sat there for an hour, silent. Tyler didn't enjoy the attention. He hated hospitals, hated being unable to walk, and hated the way his ribs throbbed every time he laughed or coughed. But when the Glary students visited and offered a quiet "thank you," he nodded. "That's enough," he said, and for them it was. Tyler shifted in the medbed, grimacing as a fresh jolt of pain climbed his leg. The brace tugged slightly against the tendons, and the weight of the immobilizer felt like someone had strapped a toolbox to his thigh. He reached for the call panel beside the bed, but missed by a few inches. A long, translucent arm extended past him and tapped the button with a soft chime. "You require assistance," said a voice with a slight chirping undertone. Tyler blinked and looked up at the creature looming beside him. Its skin was a pale orange and semi-luminescent, its body tall and narrow, with two small slits where a nose might go and a single wide eye that blinked sideways. "Haven't seen you before," Tyler muttered. "I am Vren. I study traumatic memory response in carbon-based bipeds," it answered, folding its extra set of limbs neatly behind its back. "You are currently the most statistically anomalous example of your species within a 500 light-year radius." Tyler squinted. "That's supposed to be flattering, not particularly, but it is. Notable." A nurse entered, gave Vren a cautious glance, then checked the vitals display. "You're overdue for your second muscle stimulant," she said, prepping a small injector. "You'll feel a twitch, don't fight it." Tyler tensed anyway as the cold hiss of the injector pressed into his upper arm. His thigh jerked involuntarily, and a sharp cramp pulsed through the muscle. "Any more of those and I'm going to kick someone by accident," he muttered through clenched teeth. "You're not strong enough to kick a shadow right now," the nurse replied, adjusting the brace straps. 3 more days before you can attempt assisted standing." Vren leaned closer, tilting its head. "How did you determine your physical limits during the fire retrieval? Were you estimating muscle fatigue or relying on instinctual heuristics?" "I didn't stop to calculate anything," Tyler said, shifting uncomfortably against the stiff bedding. "I just moved until something gave out. That is biologically reckless, maybe, but it worked." The nurse snorted. "He tore 4 ligaments and dislocated his hip. Worked is generous." "I am attempting to understand the rationale," Vren continued, undeterred. "Most species withdraw when bodily damage exceeds survivability projections. You did not." "Guess I missed that memo," Tyler said, rubbing his forehead. "Is this going to be a research interview, or are you just here for the ambience?" Vren blinked slowly. "I will return with a neural resonance scanner tomorrow. You may decline if discomfort exceeds tolerance." "I'd rather decline now, thanks." The alien paused, then nodded once and glided silently from the room. Tyler exhaled and closed his eyes. "Is it always like this here?" The nurse didn't answer. She just checked the Roman 4 levels again and left. Later that same cycle, just before lights dimmed across the medical wing, the door opened again. This time it was Trenak, holding an awkwardly folded chart under one arm. His usually pristine uniform was missing a badge, and his boots looked like they'd been chewed on. "You're becoming famous," he said without preamble. Tyler didn't open his eyes. "Great, just what I wanted. They put your name into the Academy's emergency response archives. The entry says exceeded protocol thresholds during uncontrolled fire scenario. Catchy." Trenak approached the bed and pulled up the guest stool, rotating it until it clicked into a lower sitting height. "I watched the footage," he went on, "the surveillance feeds. You're not supposed to survive that kind of heat. Your suit was rated for 30 seconds of exposure, not 5 minutes. Tyler turned his head toward him. "Yeah, well, nobody told the fire." Trenak looked genuinely puzzled. "You were inside longer than any of our simulations predicted survivability. Why didn't you retreat when you found the first 2 glary? Because the third was still inside. And you assumed they were alive, I hoped." Trenak sat in silence for a few seconds. "Even the glary ambassador visited. Said the council might contact your planetary delegation." "I don't want to meddle," Tyler grunted. "I want to walk without sounding like a bag of rocks." Trenak leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You know, a few cycles ago, I argued that your kind avoided danger compulsively." "Yeah. I heard. I'm not retracting the theory for your entire species," Trenak said, "but you've definitely ruined the curve." Tyler let out a tired laugh. "Guess I'll take that as a compliment." "You should," Trenak said. "Because I don't offer many." By the time he left, the lights outside the window had dimmed to mimic early twilight. The Academy ran on a 26-hour cycle to accommodate the majority of its species, and Tyler was still adapting. He lay awake for another hour, listening to the soft hum of the atmospheric regulator and the distant murmur of alien voices in the hallway. 2 days passed. He was finally cleared to try standing with assistance. The physiobot arrived mid-morning, a squat, three-legged unit with stabilizing arms and a voice that sounded like someone had programmed it using old elevator instructions. "Please confirm patient identity." "Langston," he muttered, gripping the side rail. "Confirmed. Initiating vertical lift." "Brace for gravitational shift." Tyler groaned as the bed tilted upward, his weight pressing down on a leg that still didn't feel like it belonged to him. The pain was sharp but not impossible. He gritted his teeth and reached for the support bar. Good. "Now shift weight incrementally to right leg." He did. The left felt like it was wrapped in molten steel. Balance achieved. Proceed with first assisted step. It took 30 seconds to move his left foot a few inches forward. He nearly collapsed. Correction. Center of gravity misaligned. Rebalancing. Trenak appeared at the threshold, arms folded. "They said you'd be upright today. I came to see if you'd fall over." Tyler grunted. "Appreciate the moral support. You're welcome." The physiobot chirped. Humor detected, encouraging progress. Trenak stepped closer. "You ever done this kind of recovery before?" "Fourth time," Tyler said, shifting again. "Fell through a roof once. Another time I got hit with a falling beam. And a car accident back on Earth. You seem to attract collapsing architecture. Or maybe I just hang around the wrong buildings." Trenak tilted his head. "Why not stop, find a safer job? Because safe doesn't always mean useful." Another step. Another jolt of pain. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Trenak watched in silence for a while. Then, unexpectedly, he took a data chip from his belt and placed it on the small table by the bed. "What's that?" Tyler asked, panting. "A recording. Our psychological profiles of humans." "I think we need to rewrite them." "You're the first one to say that." "I won't be the last," Trenek said. "You've caused a ripple. Some of the faculty are reconsidering old assumptions." Tyler lowered himself back onto the bed with a groan. "About time someone admitted they don't know everything." Trenak didn't argue. He just nodded once and left. That evening, a group of students gathered outside the medical bay's observation window. They didn't speak to Tyler directly, just watched him through the glass as he practiced basic movement with the physiobot. Many of them were from species who'd never seen a human in person before. A few took notes. One sketched. He could feel their eyes, their questions. The quiet calculations happening behind those alien faces. Let them wonder. He wasn't there to explain. He was there to walk again. By the 4th week, Tyler could walk with a crutch under one arm and a modified brace that hissed softly every time he bent the knee. The Academy's medical wing had approved his supervised mobility, and the clearance came with a strict list of limitations. No stairs, no heavy lifting, and absolutely no emergency response activity. He agreed to 2 of those. The hallway outside the recovery quarters was built for species with varying gravity tolerances, which meant the flooring was padded but uneven in sections. Tyler had to relearn how to anticipate the slight give beneath his feet when crossing the blue-tiled segments, originally designed for beings with suction-based locomotion. As he reached the end of the corridor, a soft chiming tone pulsed over the intercom. Cycle transition imminent. Prepare for environmental shift. The lighting dimmed slightly, transitioning from a warm amber to a cool blue. Tyler leaned against the wall, catching his breath. His leg throbbed not the sharp stab of injury, but the dull, persistent ache of healing tissue stubbornly protesting every movement. A student passed by, long-limbed and covered in pale, flexible plates. They nodded once to him, no words, just a gesture, and kept walking. Tyler watched them disappear around a corner. "More of them are doing that," said a voice behind him. He turned, careful not to pivot too fast. It was Yel, the young Yelvani student who had once questioned Kale about human bravery. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes unreadable. "Doing what?" Tyler asked, nodding. "Acknowledging you." It's not standard behavior for most of them, especially not to non-faculty humans. "I didn't notice." "I did," she said, stepping closer. The Glary who you pulled out, they submitted a formal incident report to the diplomatic board. They used the phrase selfless intercession. That's never been used to describe a human before. It's usually reserved for species with collective mind constructs. Tyler gripped his crutch tighter. Don't know what to tell you, I just did what made sense. They don't think it made sense. That's the point. Then maybe they need better reference points. Yell tilted her head slightly. You still think it was ordinary. I think anyone who'd been in my position would have done the same. No, she said gently. They wouldn't have. Tyler didn't answer. Yell's gaze dropped to his leg. You're still in pain. He nodded once. It's manageable. Your species doesn't regenerate tissue quickly. That's considered a limitation in most medical classifications. Sure feels like one. But you still moved through fire, carried 3 beings out, and dragged yourself with a crushed leg. They needed help. Yell's jaw tightened. I think I understand now why your kind is so confusing to us. You act without calculation, no risk assessment, no strategic outcome. You give things up when you don't even know what you'll get back. Tyler leaned his shoulder against the cool wall. Sometimes you don't get anything back, that's not the point. She considered that. Professor Kale has added a new module. It's called Anomalous Human Behavior in Crisis Contexts. You're the case study. Tyler chuckled under his breath. Sounds like a class I'd skip. Yell didn't smile, but her expression softened. They're starting to listen. Not just about you, but about all of it. The assumptions, the models, the idea that humans are only reactive or hesitant. They're rewriting parts of the curriculum, slowly. I didn't come here to be anyone's thesis. No, but you became one. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Yell stepped aside. You're needed in room G4. Don't worry, it's not an emergency. Just go. Tyler eyed her suspiciously. Is this one of those ceremonial things? No, just go. He followed the corridor down 2 levels, the lift humming quietly as it descended. Room G4 was a lecture hall, smaller than Kale's, more intimate. As the doors opened, Tyler paused. Inside were roughly 20 students, all seated, all looking at him. They represented at least a dozen species, some translucent, others covered in fur, a few with external breathing apparatuses. Kale stood near the center, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. Tyler stepped in slowly. Kale gestured to a seat near the front. Take a moment. Tyler sat, careful to brace his leg. The seat adjusted automatically to his human dimensions. Kale spoke without ceremony. We're concluding our module on interspecies risk response. It would be incomplete without acknowledging a recent outlier. He turned to the students. As you all know, our working hypothesis was that human behavior in high-stress, unregulated environments would trend toward withdrawal or delayed action. This was based on over 400 documented incidents across colonial and non-colonial settings. The behavior of Mr. Langston has forced us to reevaluate that model. One of the students raised a hand, an appendage with 3 opposable digits and rotating joints. Is this an anomaly or the start of a pattern? Kale glanced at Tyler. That is what we are determining, which is why Mr. Langston has agreed to speak. Tyler blinked. I have. You're here. That's close enough. He gave a long sigh and shifted in his seat. All right, you've all studied humans, right? Read the papers, watch the feeds. You think we're unpredictable or inconsistent. Some of that's fair. But most of the time, we're just doing the best we can with what we've got. He looked around the room. You want to know why I went into that fire? I've seen what happens when someone waits too long. I've lived with it. If I'd stood there doing nothing, I'd have to carry that. Not just the memory, the weight of knowing I could have moved and didn't. A student with a series of blinking nodes along her spine asked, So you acted for yourself? Tyler nodded. Partly, that's the truth, but also because someone had to. And I was there. Another student leaned forward, a thin, feathered being from a low-gravity world. Would you do it again? I already know I would, Tyler said, even if it went worse, even if I didn't make it. Kale's eyes narrowed. That is the part none of our models predict. The disregard for outcome. Tyler met his gaze. Maybe the model needs to include something less measurable, like guilt or stubbornness. A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the room, not from amusement, but recognition. Kale stepped back. This session is archived. You may review later. Dismissed. The students filed out slowly, many glancing back at Tyler as they passed. A few offered nods, others just looked at him with something new in their eyes, not curiosity, but something closer to understanding. Or maybe awe. Cale remained behind. He approached Tyler, hands clasped behind his back. "I do not say this lightly," Cale said. "You have shifted a pedagogical framework that has existed for over 70 cycles." Tyler stood, wincing slightly. "Glad I could break something." Cale's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Your leg, almost useless, but it's mine. You are inconvenient to categorize." "I hear that a lot." Cale looked at him for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "Perhaps that is the most human trait of all." Tyler limped toward the door, pausing only once to glance back at the now empty room. "No flames this time," he said. "No," Cale replied. "But you still managed to leave a mark." Tyler stepped into the corridor, the soft hum of the academy surrounding him. No alarms, no fire, no screaming metal, just the quiet rhythm of a place still learning what it meant to understand something unfamiliar. He kept walking.